Okay, I have endeavored to tear down a 1999 Miata electric fuel pump based on some of the discussions we've been having about how prematurely these units are failing in Spec Miata. So let's just do a sort of a tear down and identify the components here. I've hacksawed the case of the motor apart, so this has obviously been removed from the hanger. It would normally be hanging vertically in the car. So the first part is the sock. This is where the fuel is drawn in, essentially the inlet of the pump. The next pieces are these die-cast aluminum plates that essentially make up the pump itself. This is where the pressure is developed. This impeller rotating between the clearances of these two die-cast aluminum plates is how the pressure is developed. So it's drawn up through the center of the pump assembly, and this is the core of the motor essentially. The copper commutator is here that the brushes ride on. The brushes are inside the end bell, and the brushes have got a ton of life left. What we'll find out here is that the pump is really the weakness in this assembly. After it travels through the center of the assembly, the end bell has this white plastic component here. This is where the terminals of the motor are, but more importantly, this is where the outlet of the pump is. The one-way check valve function is in here, so if you suck and blow on this, this is where the one-way check valve function is. So if you have long crank times, or you put a fuel pressure gauge on your car and it is not holding pressure for whatever the factory service manual says, I think it says you're supposed to hold something like 40 or 50 pounds for at least X minutes, or maybe it's even longer than that. But when I've seen these check valves fail, almost as soon as you key the car off, you'll see the line pressure drop, meaning the pressure that you're measuring out at your SCCA fuel port with an analog gauge. So the pump itself here, if you're not developing enough pressure to meet the book specs while running on the dyno or on the track, that problem exists in here. And what we see is the impeller is essentially completely unworn. This is a coated aluminum part, is what it appears to be. I don't know what it's coated with, but it's got some kind of coating on it. These die-cast pump plates, they appear to be anodized, and what I see here is quite a bit of galling and scoring here that's being caused by the impeller. So this is a original Mazda pump as far as I know, by the way. So my takeaway here is I don't think there's a whole lot we can do about this. If the fuel had a higher lubricity, it may be a way of mitigating this pump wear, but I think the best course of action is to monitor your fuel pressure. Buy a fuel pressure gauge where you can check in the pits or on the dyno, or install an autometer type of fuel pressure gauge in your car. And if you see that your fuel pressure is dropping when you're on the track or the dyno, if your fuel pressure is dropping, you're not running the air-fuel ratio that you think you are, you need to change the fuel pump pretty soon. Now, if your fuel pressure is okay on the dyno and the track, and all you have are long crank times, that's happening here in this check valve. I personally don't see that as a reason to immediately replace the pump. I would get one on order, I would make sure I had one, but if your only issue is long crank times, but you're able to hold the fuel pressure you want on the dyno and the track, all that's saying is that this is leaking down when you key off. It's not a cause for immediate pump replacement, in my opinion. So that's that. If you have any questions, email me.